Good afternoon, students. So today in science class, we're going to be covering, we go over some science tools and equipment vocabulary words first, and then we're going to get into this book of the Quirkles about Andy Acid. Okay, so let's get into these vocabulary terms real quickly here. Okay, so here I have science tools and equipment. So in here are safety tools that scientists use while they're in the lab, as well as students who take a lab class. So as well as safety tools, there's also tools that scientists use to obtain information or to gather data, okay? So the first safety tool that we have is an apron or a lab coat. And it is an article of clothing that you wear to protect your clothes, okay? So when scientists go into labs, they wear clothes just like me and you, regular clothes, and to protect those clothing and your skin, we wear these aprons, okay? And it's to prevent any liquids from falling onto your skin or clothing. And some of them can be very dangerous, and they actually eat your skin. Okay, so next we have safety goggles, and they are special glasses that fit tightly around your eyes to protect them. So not to be confused with regular glasses, these are actually goggles. So they'll tightly compress on your face, and there's a band around. And this will prevent liquid and other substances from entering your eyes, such as gases or very corrosive liquids and chemicals. Okay, next we have a magnet, a tool that attracts objects made of iron. So a magnet, it technically, if you have something that's like a little piece of metal and you get a magnet, it's going to look like magic to you, but it's not really magic. It's just the magnetic force that attracts the ions of the metal to the magnet. And in Spanish, this is an imán for you students who just recently had Spanish class. So this is an imán, magnet. So we have a thermometer, and this is a tool used to measure temperature or how hot or cold something is. So whenever you see the Weather Channel and it says, oh, it's 67 degrees outside, that is usually in Fahrenheit. And 67 degrees is it's not too hot or it's not too cold, it's just right. Now here in Laredo, it usually averages about 98 degrees, pretty much in the spring, summertime, and that's really hot. So it's like right now, it's sort of lowering in degrees, and thermometers is how we use to check for temperature. Okay, now a ruler is a tool used to measure the length or width of an object. Okay, so a ruler is those long strip of woods. I'm pretty sure you've all seen them with the little lines in them with the numbers written on them. So what that does is it measures in inches or centimeters, and that is used to gain a precise measurement. And measurement is useful for precise, like, for example, builders. Builders, if you're building a house, you need to make it perfect, so you need the correct measurements, and rulers help do that. Okay, so now we have hand lens, and it is a tool which makes small objects look bigger. So for example, if, say I have a bug, and I want to really see the fine details of the bug, I can put the lens over the bug, and then through my eyes, it's going to magnify the bug and make it look bigger than what it really is. So it's to make tiny objects look bigger. And a microscope, okay, now this is the same as a hand lens, but it's more advanced. Okay, so it is a tool that makes very small objects look bigger. So by very small, I'm not talking about a bug, I'm talking about cells. And cells, you cannot see them with just your eyesight. You need the microscope lens, and the microscope lens also uses light, and the light helps you see the little tiny objects that we can't even grab these objects. That's a better way to say how small these objects are. We can't just grab them, it's just, they're very tiny. Okay, so now gloves, okay, so they are protective hand coverings that have separate parts for the thumb and fingers, or an oven mitt. Okay, so gloves is for the protection of your hands. And the hands are very important because we can use things, we can grab things, we could use them with our hands. And it's very important to protect them, so wearing gloves, very important. Okay, so a telescope. And a telescope is a tool that makes far away objects look near. So instead of looking at objects up close, like the bug or the cells, we're looking at very far away objects, very far. And this is used for space. So we could see the moon, we could see other planets, we could see stars. Whenever you want to see, especially at nighttime, telescopes are really fun to use. Okay. So now we went over the tools and equipment. Make sure to remember those important safety equipment because those are vital when you are in the lab or when we're doing experiments. In a little while, I'm going to do an experiment about antiacid, and I'm going to be wearing some of these materials so you can see what they are and how to use them and what they're used for. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to get into the court goals. Today we're going to be going over the antiacid. Okay, so an acid, there's acids and bases. Okay, so an acid is, how can you say acid? Okay, some acids are good and some acids are bad. So there's a bad acid that mainly, okay, how many of you eat hot Cheetos, say for example? Okay, hot Cheetos, they have a lot of acid in there. So when you eat them, and if you ever get a stomach ache, that is the stomach acid trying to digest your food. Because there actually is acid inside of us, but it is not dangerous, okay? We're still living and it helps us break down foods and digest it. And now a base is different from an acid because it's not so acidic, but it is dangerous if it goes very high on a scale. And we use a scale to determine how acidic or how basic a liquid or how acidic or basic a liquid is. Okay. So now we're going to get into reading the book, the little story about antiacid, okay? Okay, so Andy-acid is the most adventurous and athletic of all the Quirkles. Andy always wears bright red tennis shoes. He loves to do aerobics and to keep fit. Andy spends much of his time learning about acids in the foods and how acids affect the body. Okay, so here we have Andy Acid, and he's the most adventurous and athletic. So one afternoon, Andy Acid was jogging down the alley when he ran into his friend Annie, Alligator. Annie was crying and holding her abdomen. She appeared to be in much pain. Andy Acid said, "Annie, what is wrong with you? Do you have a pain in your abdomen?" All Annie said was, "Ah." So abdomen, what do you think the abdomen is in this story right here? Okay, well the abdomen is the stomach area. So she's grabbing onto her stomach and she's crying in pain because her stomach or her abdomen is hurting her. Andy Acid knew he must accompany Annie to Dr. Alfred's office. Annie Alligator admitted to Dr. Alfred she had eaten 50 tomatoes and drank 10 glasses of apple juice at her Aunt Alice's house. Annie asked, "What is wrong with my abdomen, Dr. Alfred?" So students, what do you think is wrong with Annie Alligator? Was it because she ate too much at her auntie's house? Okay, well let's find out. Let's see what the doctor says. So after looking at Annie, Dr. Alfred knew she had accidentally eaten too much acidic food. Because of the large amounts of acid in tomatoes and apple juice, it was difficult for Annie to digest the food and drink. Andy felt terrible that acid was one of the causes of Annie's abdominal pain. Okay, so we came to the conclusion that her foods that she was eating was too acidic. And when it's too acidic, the stomach can only digest so much of it. So the stomach has to produce more acid, and that's what causes your abdominal pain. So Annie had a bad attitude all the way home. Acid is not good. I will never eat foods that are high in acid again, said Annie. She was very aggravated.